everybody can score in today's NFL, right? The defense is pretty easy. It's not as aggressive as it was back then, 10, 15 years ago. A lot of the rules favor the offensive players, especially the wide receivers. They can get a lot of separation easily because you can't really play up on them. But for some reason, the New England Patriots can't score. Can't score. This NFL era is on easy mode. Like, you know, like they got the Madden modes, they got easy, hard, or Hall of Fame, or whatever the modes are. I haven't played Madden in years. Rookie mode, whatever. The NFL, this era of NFL offense is on rookie mode. And for some reason, the New England Patriots still can't score points. They can't even get a fucking field goal. A field goal? You telling me you couldn't get 3 goddamn points? You get shut out for the second time this season? And I'm trying to figure out here what's going on. It's mind-boggling. Look, you can say all you want about, the offensive coordinator, and last year the excuses. What was the excuses? Matt Patricia's not an offensive guy, and he's this and that and all this other stuff. So there you go out, you go get an offensive guy, and the offense looks worse, with an actual offensive guy. So was it really Matt Patricia that was the problem? I mean, you go out in the offseason, you get an offensive coach. You also go out and get a guy who has potential to get 1,000 yards in a season. I mean, last season, JuJu nearly had 1,000 yards with Kansas City, and he wasn't the primary option. He also had it, I think it's his second year, he had like over 1,000 yards with Pittsburgh. Now, granted, he was playing with Antonio Brown, but he also still played pretty solid after Brown left. Not a number one receiver, but still a guy who's good enough to at least get some yards and some catches. But now, since he got to New England, the guy is almost non-existent in the offense. He can't produce. Is it because is JuJu that bad? Did a 26-year-old wide receiver suck that bad from one year to the next? Like, for a guy with his talent dropped off that much from Kansas City to New England? Now, of course, he will take some blame for not producing, of course. If you don't produce, you should be blamed. But why isn't he producing? Devante Parker, another guy who, when we brought him over, we all were pretty high. We were like, okay, if the guy can stay healthy, he would be a good pickup. We thought we considered that a potential steal, right? Because he was pretty productive in Miami when he was on the field. No, the guy, as long as he suits up, would be fine. So you add him. You thought Bourne would progress. He looked like he was on track to progress, especially with Jacoby Meyer moving on to Oakland. You know, okay, this is Bourne's time. Bourne will be the next guy up. And you never thought that any of these guys would be number one receivers, but you at least thought that they all, at best case scenario, you would have a handful of number twos. That would be highly productive with the tight ends, with Hunter Henry, another guy who you thought would be good. And then with the running game and the defense, you thought this is a good recipe for a team that could compete. But it seems that none of that has happened. Now look, the Patriots are losing games. They're going to have a top pick, which is pretty good, I guess. But if you can't develop guys, does it really matter who you pick? Unless you guarantee to pick a guy who you know can play. And with these college guys, it's a wild card because you still got to develop. You got to develop these guys. Many of them got to be developed. Yeah, they're great. They throw for a lot of yards in college, but if they don't go to the right system, they don't develop. They don't develop with the team that they're on, it won't mean nothing. And the bottom line is the Patriots on the offensive side of the ball didn't really have to develop a quarterback in like 20 years. Right? Tom Brady was the guy. He came in, he worked hard from day one, even as a third string or second string, whatever. He worked his way in. You know the story. They had to carry him on as a third quarterback because they didn't want to let him. They was afraid. They knew the guy had potential. They saw his work ethic. They knew it. Did they know before the draft? No. Obviously, because if people would have knew then, he wouldn't have fell all the way to where he fell. But when he got into the building, they knew they had something. That's why they carried him on as a third QB for early on for a while. Usually teams drop the third guy or send him to the practice squad, but at the risk of potentially him being scooped up by another team, they said, no, we got to hold on to this guy. And then he worked his way up, really quickly, became back up, and then, the rest is history as he became the starter. But the guys are not built like Tom Brady. Those guys don't exist. And if you do find those guys, you're not gonna find them in the 6th round anymore. A lot of these guys are getting scooped up quick. So you have to develop your guys. And the bottom line is New England has rarely developed any offensive weapons, at least as long as I've been around. Like in the last 20 years, they rarely developed. Like the only guy you could say that they kind of developed from like scratch would probably be Wes Welker, right? To a degree, because Wes Welker was a quarterback / slot receiver that developed into a really good all-time Patriot great. Yeah, other guys have been good receivers over the years, but no one's really been developed from rookie, draft pick, all the way on to greatness. Wes Welker probably, Julian Edelman was probably the only one to memory. Other guys have been signed, they came in, they filled their role for a year or two, then they moved on. So the Patriots have really no recent history in the last 2 decades of developing offensive weapons. So even if they do get a top pick, are we really confident that this Patriot current regime can develop the next great quarterback? Right? We've seen Mac Jones in year 1 look like he was going to be pretty good, and then it just went downhill from there. And look, I defended Mac Jones. It's not all on Mac. Trust me, it's really not. But once you start to regress, what can you do? This is NFL is a results-driven league. You can't go back to what happened 2 years ago, what he did as a rookie. That means nothing. Right? Shit. You can go back to tape and see me back in high school trucking guys over. That means nothing today. That don't mean I can walk on a field and do it. So you got to erase that out of your mind. The bottom line is if you're not getting results, you're not getting results. And I will say this. It's just pathetic that an NFL team in this era can't score points. It's really bad. Can't score points at home. Like you could score by mistake. I see some of these teams that are terrible offensively putting up points. Arizona, not a great offensive team. They're not great, right? It's just no excuse that you have guys on this roster that have produced before, and they're in the prime of their careers and they're not doing nothing. No excuse. There's really no excuse. And people are like celebrating that. Oh, we played a good game. Zach Bailey didn't turn the ball over. That's an accomplishment. Like, what are we doing here? Like, is the bar so low now that it's just that? And look, I don't agree with the backlash as far as like thinking people should get fired. All I'm saying is that it's kind of bad that the personnel is not producing. why isn't the personnel producing? There's got to be something mentally going on inside that locker room on the offensive side of the ball. Think about it. Every day in practice, these guys are going up against a pretty good defense. So it's not like they can't be prepared, right? The defense is pretty good. And it sucks because you're wasting a really solid defense. I mean, some of these guys would be Pro Bowlers. And if the team was actually good, some of them would probably be all pros. But for some reason, the team can't score. It just sucks. This team should not be 2-11. This is not a 2-11 roster at all. You can say what you want about the offensive weapon. Hey, there's no weapons. Look, we've seen Tom Brady, and I know it's hard to use Tom Brady as a parameter here because Brady's the greatest of all time, but Brady wasn't the GOAT 10 years ago. I mean, not 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like when in his first 3-4 years, he wasn't the GOAT. Right? Did we really consider him the GOAT? So probably after, years? Probably after when he started, I guess, right before the 07 season. That's when the GOAT conversation started coming in. But it was still, people were still saying they would take Montana over Brady, even after 07. So the first quarter or half of Brady's career, he wasn't the GOAT. He was a all-pro quarterback, a really good quarterback. And Brady didn't have a lot of great weapons. Like I said, he didn't have great weapons throughout his career. So if I look at this roster, I'm telling you right now, if you dump, how old is Mac Jones? Let's just say 25-year-old Tom Brady. 25-year-old in this era. If you remember, Brady led the league in touchdown passes in like his second season. I think he had like 28 TDs. That led the NFL. I think it was the second season or his first full year. I don't remember exactly. But so if you dump 25-year-old Tom Brady in today's NFL with this Patriot roster on offense, this offense looks a lot better. Way better. Not even close. Because these are not bad players. These are not slouch. These are not like, you got JuJu, Devante Parker, Hunter Henry. These are solid pieces. Brady's worked with worse. A lot worse. You give Brady this offensive roster with the two running backs and Zeke and Stevenson, with the tight end Henry, Parker, Bourne, and JuJu, with that defense, this Patriot team is winning 11-12 games. They're winning the AFC. The Miami might be the only real challenge in the AFC East. They'll probably be back and forth with that. But this team would go tit for tat with Miami this year. And look, like I said, it's hard to use Brady as an example, but I'm saying 25-year-old Tom Brady. Not GOAT Tom Brady at 30, 31, 32 and on. Come on, 25-year-old Tom Brady would do a lot more with this roster. Come on, has Brady, how Brady had never really had a, how many times did Brady have like an 1,000-yard receiver on his team? He rarely had one. A few times maybe. How many times has he had a guy who's had 100 catches? 100 catch receiver. I know Troy Brown. I was about to say Tim Brown. I think Troy Brown early on had 100 catches. And he was playing like both positions. Right? But Brady hadn't had two of those guys at the same time. You got two of these guys on the roster right now. JuJu 26, 27. Devante Parker's 30 years old. These guys are not old. They're not like I said, I get it. Devante has the injury history. JuJu, he's bounced around. But he played pretty solid last year. Had almost 1,000 yards. I'm just saying. What's the excuse here? What is really the excuse? Then you got to start to think, is it the quarterback? I think the quarterbacks are not, they all suck right now. They all suck. Right? They suck. This year, they all suck. So, but I hear people always say that if just go out get some weapons for Mac. Get some weapons. I mean, these are NFL players. There's weapons there. Part of being a good quarterback is making players around you better. Tom Brady understood that. Did Brady always have the best weapons? No. He had an undersized receiver and Julian Edelman. He had a tight end in Gronk who, yes, when he was on the field, he was great. But at any time, he could break down and miss games. And he didn't always have Gronk in the big games because Gronk would be injured. He had another tight end who murdered people, ended up leaving. And a lot of times, his receivers were all undersized. For the most part. And he has the filling guys. So, it's not like it was perfect for Tom either. But he made it work. I don't know, man. I honestly, I don't know what. I just think it's pretty sad that you can't score in the NFL. In today's NFL, there's no excuse to get shut out at home against the Chargers, not the '85 Bears, not the 2000 Ravens, the fucking Chargers.